How close did Australia come to being a French colony? It could have been Le Jour d'Australie instead of Australia Day. How close was it?
That's right. It was less than a week. It was less than a week. It was a great race. It's had American intervention, and it was a race around the world, across Siberia.
So take us through the details. I mean, I want people to read your book, but give us the brief outline. How did this come about? And particularly, I love this idea of the lull between the American Revolution and the French Revolution, and that 6-year lull is what gave birth to Australia.
It was extraordinary. The American ambassador, Thomas Jefferson, was as worried as England was about what La Perouse was going to do in the Pacific. He didn't want French colonies on his west coast, not that he owned it then. So he got some information from a spy, found out that they were going to plant colonies in Canada, on the Canadian coast and in New Holland. And he didn't mind about New Holland, and in fact, no one bothered telling the English for a few months. But then an American who'd sailed with Cook was over in England and told Joseph Banks. So the next day, the English cabinet held an emergency meeting and decided to send the first fleet.
Now, why was it so important for Britain to establish this foothold? And also tell me, Margaret, I'm fascinated by Pitt the Younger, the Prime Minister who was appointed by the King, and what role that played in Australia's foundation.
Well, they wanted to establish the colony to preserve Port Jackson. It was a strategic advantage in the Pacific, but it wasn't going to, it was too expensive to do. They knew it was there, but it was just too expensive. And it was really only when they found that the French were going to take it that they said, no, we'll go, and just had to pile on a lot of money and a lot of ships and race around the world. Meanwhile, of course, the French heard about the first fleet. So they sent a letter to La Perouse, who was then in Kamchatka. Well, he was almost in Kamchatka, in eastern Russia. And so a courier was sent to Moscow across Siberia, and he burst in through the doors of the ballroom where the Russian government was holding a ball for the Frenchmen. And the instructions said, the English are going to Botany Bay, you cancel everything else and you go straight there too. And so he sailed south, and Governor Phillip was sailing west from Cape Town, and they really met on January the 23rd, but didn't see each other. So it was 26th by the time they got there.
Margaret, this has all I interviewed Bruce Beresford yesterday. This has all the makings of a Hollywood blockbuster. I hope Peter Weir and Bruce Beresford are taking notes, because this is an amazing story. We've got spies, we've got treks across Siberia. I want to just it's an amazing book, and I urge people to buy it, to read it. It's a thriller. But Margaret, you trained as a lawyer, so not as a historian. How did you come to write this book?
Well, it was a few funny questions popped up from sailors. Sailors said that they didn't know why Captain Cook didn't know he was in Bass Strait when he was in it in 1770, why he wasn't tempted to go through Sydney Heads when he passed by. And one thing led to another, and I thought, well, this is a mystery. Why would the British government spend millions in today's money sending 700 petty criminals to the other side of the world? There has to be something more to it. And so then I just dug, and I've spent 30 years digging for the answers, and it was a lot of fun. But it's a wonderful, it is a ripping yarn, as you say. And I wish the children were told it, because they'd sit up in their history classes, I think.
Well, you're absolutely right. We're told this kind of dreary Manning Clark version of the story that basically we were just a dumping ground and just somewhere out at the far ends of the earth, just get rid of the convicts down there. Your book and your legal training shows that there was, in fact, a whole other political story and agenda going on. It's fascinating reading. As I said, it is a ripping yarn. And yes, you're quite right. It should be what is being taught in schools, and maybe some teachers and maybe whoever is in charge of the curriculum at the moment might take a closer look at Margaret Cameron-Ash's book. Thanks so much. Beating France to Botany Bay, the race to found modern Australia. Thank you so much for coming on Inside the News on Australia Day, Margaret. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rowan.